Looking for the king of podcasts? You're at the wrong channel. Looking for good ideas for life? You are far from good hands. If you think the listener is always right, you are far from the right place. Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, a rebel by choice. If you want a host that floats between love and madness, then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
You drive me wild.
What up, Crazy Train Radio?
You look like hell.
And I could look the same.
What's the photo for?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I love scotch. I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch. Here it goes down into my belly.
What's it open?
Say it! Say it!
Say it. 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 Say it.
Don't mess with me, I'm one crazy mofo.
Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
Guys, what's up? This is wrestling superstar Gunner, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, the Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this next guest has done a lot in the wrestling business, but also can say he deserves a little more respect because he actually served his country in the U.S. Marines. He started out as Phil Shatter on the independent promotions, worked his way to TNA back in 2010-ish as Gunner and part of Immortal, won both a tag title there with James Storm and Television Championship individually, was let go from there unfortunately at the time. Rumor has it, we'll get into it, he was a cable guy and not Jim Carrey for some time, then went to WWE and NXT as Jaxson Ryker, and he was notably part of a faction called Forgotten Sons. But we'll get all into all this. He is the pride of Hickory, North Carolina. This gentleman, Chad Lail, is going back from what he had told me via email, going back to the name Gunner. So let's say hello to Gunner, Jaxson, however you want to address him. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. And yeah, we can keep it at Gunner and go from there, man. I appreciate the time with you guys tonight. I look forward to talking business, career, future, past, everything. So let's roll.
I appreciate it, and thank you for the time.
Yes,
Mike, we were talking right before Gunner had joined us, and you were curious to know about his start. So go ahead.
Well, I want to know, Chad, who broke you in? And then second question, I always have loaded questions like radio press conference things, is, the Gunner name obviously makes sense for any of us who know and appreciate and respect people in the military, but Jaxson Ryker and Phil Shatter. So where did those names come in? But more importantly, who broke you in? Were you a lifer watching the biz as a kid? How did you get interested in it? So
yeah,
3 questions there.
Oh yeah, no worries, man. I just flow it all together, so I am a lifer, professional wrestling fan since I was 5 years old, and just as a kid, it was something that captivated me, something I was amazed by, and I wasn't into sports, didn't care too much about football or anything else. As a boy, it was pro wrestling and bodybuilding. So kind of pro wrestling kind of rolled both worlds into one. And these at the time when I'm growing up in the later 80s, early 90s, I mean, you guys know just as well as me, the characters back then were just larger than life. I mean, they were superheroes. Hogan, Macho Man, just Undertaker, all these guys we can sit here and name forever. And it's just something that captivated me, something I wanted to do as a child. And so for me, I broke in with an independent wrestler, real name's Tommy Birch. He wrestled as Abel Adams. So some people listening may know of him, some may not. And it's one of those things where I didn't go to a big wrestling school. Tommy kind of took me under his wing at the age of 18 when I got out of high school. That was my dad's rule. He goes, you can do whatever you want to do. You can pursue this wrestling gig, but I need you to graduate high school at least. And I was thankful he didn't say college, because I had no ambitions of going to college. So I didn't want to. All I wanted to do was chase this wild dream of, being a professional wrestler. So Tommy took me under his wing, started training me in a literal garage, had motorcycles in it, and this old beat up, rusted ring with a torn canvas. And just, the wintertime it's cold, the summertime it's blazing hot, and just showed me the ropes, literally. And it's just something some people ask me, I got asked a question a couple of weeks ago, what did you think when you took your first bump or hit the ropes for the first time? Did you hate it, or did you think, what have I gotten myself into? And for me, I think I fell in love even more. I was like, man, this is incredible. So Tommy just trained me. He for about 6 months, did the drills, taught me the basics. And then he's like, you know what, just start traveling to some independent shows with me all through North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina, and at that time, early 2000, we're talking 2000, 2001. So well over 20 years ago, the indie scene was, there were some big shows, and it's obviously grown over the past 20 years. Independence, the guys are making a living on the independent scene. Back then, you're rolling into a gymnasium or a dirty, dirty barn wrestling for $5 or $10, So to me, it's one of those things that I feel like it's a lost art for the most part, where I got a chance to live that, really paying my dues and kind of, really just trucking the road with Tommy, my trainer, and just getting a chance to learn life in the professional wrestling world. So do you want me to keep rolling right into the Phil Shatter? Go ahead.
Yeah. Then I'll throw back to Jonathan. Those 2 names, did he come up with, or did you come up with Phil Shatter? And then maybe a little, I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. The Jaxson Ryker, I was trying to place. Okay, what does that name mean?
So long story short, Gunner, obviously we can say Marine Corps. I was a motor T operator by job in the Marine Corps, but most of the time when we were overseas in Iraq and those areas, I was manning a 50 cal or for the military buffs out there, a 240 Golf, which is another, automatic, basically machine gun. So I took that name and with TNA and we were like, we'll run with Gunner because we can use that. So Phil Shatter, it's wild. I just took the name Phil. I was a big, this is weird because, people are like, what? But I was a big Pantera fan growing up as a kid. So the rock metal band Pantera. So Phil Anselmo was the lead singer. And I was like, Phil always sounded like just, when I heard Phil Anselmo, I'm thinking this guy's, he's bad, man. So I took that and used that name. And then there was one time we were wrestling before I really had a name. And I remember this kid, I told him to duck a clothesline and he didn't. And I hit him right in the face. And literally like splattered his nose all over the place. So Tommy, he goes, man, you shattered that guy's face. And I was like, well, here we go. I think we're going to call myself Phil Shatter. So we just one and the other, man. Jaxson Ryker. I've always liked the name Jax, but we had Nia Jax. I was like, can't really go with Nia Jax. So I said Jaxson with an X. Thought that was a pretty cool gig. Me and my wife, we have a 5-year-old daughter. And we are hoping to have a son one day. And we always said if we have a little boy, we would name him Ryker. I've always liked the name Ryker. So I just took those two and put it together. And luckily WWE was like, yeah, we like that. Because a lot of times they'll throw you a name and make you stick with something that just sounds god awful. So we didn't, luckily I was pretty fortunate.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I want to, and we don't want to bypass it, but I want to bring up about those early indie days, and we're not going to take us step by step. Not what we do, we bounce around. But I'm curious to know when, because obviously we mentioned you served time with the Marines and been overseas and everything else like that. But with that lifestyle that being in the military requires of people, not only the people serving, but their families and such. Right. How in the hell were you able to incorporate doing indie shots and stuff like that? Because I would think you'd have to say something to your superiors. Hey, I'm gonna leave base on Saturday to go wrestle, like you said, wrestle in this barn, and you know what I mean. Like they probably look at you with, son, you got 3 heads or something. Like probably look at you like.
No, man. It's. I was pretty blessed and fortunate in the military. So. I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So that's roughly 5.5 hours from my hometown. And every weekend, unless I was deployed for that month or that year in 2005 when I was overseas, me and a buddy would pack into a car on a Friday, whatever time I got off work. Sometimes it was early, sometimes it was late. Drive to my house, wrestle a Saturday, sometimes a Sunday, and get back to base, man, sometimes 2 hours before I had to report. So the good thing about it is a lot of my superiors were aware that I was a pro wrestler, independent pro wrestler, and they thought it was awesome. And none of them had a problem with me leaving base, going to do these shows. They said, as long as you report back to work on Monday, we don't care what you do. I mean, they had guys going out getting wasted throughout the weekend. So luckily I was doing something to chase a dream. But dude, it's funny because I so many of my superiors, matter of fact, about I guess probably 2 years ago, WWE sent us to Camp Lejeune to do a tribute to the troops. And I ran into one of my superiors who had retired, and he just thought it was the coolest thing. And I thanked him. I was like, well, thank you for always, allowing me to basically leave base, because they could have told me not to, and I could have gotten in trouble. But I had a lot of people that supported me, man. So I'm very thankful for that.
But is that something, because I never served, but is that something that you had to tell them why you were going to away for the weekend or whatever during your downtime?
No, honestly, no, because so on our weekends, if we had a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, were basically our days off. Long as you wasn't going and getting in trouble or doing something stupid. I mean, a lot of people would travel, fly back home or whatever. And so, no, we really didn't have to let them know. Now, if I came back with a broken leg or something, luckily I never got really severely hurt. They were going to be like, well, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
But, no, man, no, it was just, it was what we called our weekend, basically like a normal job. You just kind of do your own thing.
Nice. So, and I'm going to throw back to Dr. Mike in a second because he is followed TNA, now Impact and all for a long time. But how did you go from the independents to working with them and getting aligned with Jeff Jarrett and such?
Yeah, so we'll cram that all, man. In 2006, got out of the Marine Corps. I said, okay, well, it's time to really dive headfirst in and pursue this dream. If this is what I want to do, I'm a 23-year-old man, I guess, 23-year young man, whatever you want to call me. I chose to start. I got my foot in the door through a mutual friend, a buddy of mine, Jason Justice, who helped me get into NWA Anarchy, also known as Wild Side back in the day. So I brought a VHS tape down with my resume on a piece of paper and handed it to Bill Behrens and said, here's my stuff. And then about a month later, he called me and said, hey, we'd like to bring you in and start, working our local. And I think Anarchy at the time was there was some national TV, or not national, but local.
Syndication.
There you go, syndication. So, man, that's how I got my foot in the door there. Long story short, to cram it all together, at times, Terry Taylor would come down to NWA Anarchy. He was good buddies with Bill Behrens. Introduced myself to Terry. At that time, I'm like a 255-pound, I thought, good-looking kid who had, skills, and Terry kept his eyes on me. And there was an opportunity opened up in 2008 for me and a few other guys, for those who remember, to go down to Impact and start working. But Terry goes, listen, it's not wrestling. You're going to have to come down and be on-air security guys for Dixie Carter and kind of like henchmen. And I was like, Terry, whatever it takes, don't care. So they paid us a daily fee to drive down. So we would do an Anarchy show on a Saturday night, jump in a car, drive 9 hours, get there at 7 a.m., get up and go to the arena at whatever time and be there for 3-4 days filming. And that's really where my foot in the door, they saw that Terry saw basically that, every week, every other week, I was willing to drive down, put in this time, this work to get an opportunity. And that's where it happened. And in 2010, I signed my first contract with him. Jeff Jarrett did. You mentioned his name. He did. We met back in, say, 2007 or so. We always kept in touch. I know he was one that really vouched for me with the office and the decision to give me a job as well.
Dr. Mike, do you
I feel like an old man. I've known Jeff Jarrett since he was a little kid. His grandma, Miss Christine, was a famous Nashville promoter at the fairgrounds, total legend. Obviously, his dad is a genius. And Jeff is always bugging me for pictures of him with Owen Hart.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Terry Taylor, though, that would be interesting because I know, obviously, probably, hopefully, because he bopped back and forth. He's all over the place, sure. Sort of like Pritchard. If you work with him in TNA, and then he might have been with you in your time in NXT. Mm-hmm. But going back to TNA, I loved your tag team with James Storm. I thought, a couple of total badasses that look like badasses are supposed to look like. And you guys could have had a great trio, like a Freebirds trio with Rude in there, but maybe the timing or whatever. But tell us about that, and maybe some thoughts on Dixie Carter, who she's nice to me at shows and stuff, but I also thought, this is the proverbial mark with big time money. We're seeing that now on certain levels with a rock star and a football guy competition events.
Mm-hmm. So for me, man, like I really enjoyed the James Storm tag team. And you're right. There was a couple times we had talked about kind of doing a trio. I think there was an opportunity there. We always sit and laugh. And even when he and I talk here and there now, we're like, man, they put us together. We won the tag titles and we literally, I think, defended them one time. And maybe the next time we lost them. And we always laugh because it's like, man, we could have really probably done some stuff with this. But I look at it and realize kind of the story that we used to build out of it, because luckily the office was very keen on James and me and James would get together and come up with some different ideas like the I Quit match, the cage match, intertwining my father into a real life situation. So that was my real dad, which was really cool to kind of bring him in because he was one that, he took me to shows when I was a kid. He sat, Monday Night Wars and sat with me on the couch and, he was a big Sting fan. So it's just really cool to have my dad in that situation, man. But that was one of my favorite feuds with James. We, I tell people you got this 6 or 7 months where you see all this TV stuff we did. I mean, there was live events where we were working 3 or 4 nights a week doing some of the same matches. So we beat each other to death for 6 or 7 months. But he was always cool to work with, man. Very respectful, all about the story and the bigger picture. And then Dixie, like you said, she always was super nice to me. I stayed away from the political side of the business. I always kind of tried to do that. But I can agree. Some of us would talk about the aspect of, man, it's just kind of like we were action figures a little bit, for her. She was just having fun, and there was times where we were like, she's taking up some TV time. It could be given to some younger talent, and I'm not dogging her. She was in the wrestling business, mom and dad, their energy company there in Dallas, Panda Energy or whatever, was shoveling the money in. And, I mean, she was having fun, but I was like, gosh, there's so many more opportunities. There's fans sitting at home going, well, what about so-and-so who's not on TV? And, but that's the business, man. It happens in all the companies now.
Well, I know it's old news. Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I know it's old news, and you mentioned about the energy company and all Phil earning money and yada, yada, yada. But did you ever have an issue with pay at the time when those stories were going around?
Yeah.
Man, that's a good question, though, because like a lot of guys did. There was a few times I had to reach out and go, hey, where's my check from whatever 3 weeks ago? But for the most part, I was smart. I would come home and if we did 3 sets of tapings or whatever, I would write it on my calendar. So I kept track of, okay, this is my check that comes in. This is the number. I'm very thankful to say there wasn't many times I had to reach out and go, where's my money at? Because there was some of the talent that had that issue. And I don't know why that was a problem, but it definitely was an issue for some.
Well, that's good that you were trying to keep logistics of everything, and
got to.
Yeah, because you know what? No matter what anybody says, you guys got bills like everybody else.
Absolutely.
And you guys got to be able to take care of business on the home front.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But I know you leave TNA and was it 15, 16, something like that. And I mentioned with tongue in cheek about working a shoot job as the working for your local cable company. So what made you say, you know what, I'm going to try to get work here? And did you ever get recognized? Hey, weren't you Gunner during that time period?
So I left. They released me in 2015 of June. And during the 2015 to 2017, before I signed with WWE, I still did many, many independent shows. I mean, I stayed pretty busy. The cable thing came because, man, at the 2016 of September, my daughter was born, and I was like, it was one of those decisions where I was like, well, I gotta work. Independent is not paying the job, or paying the bills, and I got a baby to feed, and it's just one of those responsibility things. Where it was definitely a pride swallowing thing, because I went from a guy that was on TV who was very prideful about it at the time to, man, I'm working at a cable job, now walking into people's houses. But you know what? It's taught me a lot over the years. And as a father, that's my main goal is to raise my daughter, take care of my daughter, whatever I have to do. But there was one time I would work alongside of a guy who was training me at the time, and and it's funny because that day he goes, hey man, does anybody ever recognize you while you're out on the job? I was like, no, not really. So we go into this guy's house and we're fixing something, and this guy's just staring at me, and I'm like, oh man, we're about to encounter this. And this guy's just staring at me. He goes, hey man, you kind of look like Gunner from Impact Wrestling. And we both just start laughing. And of course, I admit to it. So it was one of those things where I was like, man, here I am, live professional wrestling on TV, out fixing this guy's cable. But dude, that's the life. I mean, that's the life of an independent worker. You got guys working grocery stores and wrestling on the weekend,
Hey, you got to pay the bills.
That's it, man.
Insurance, all that fun stuff.
Everything.
Mike, you were going to bring something up there before I cut you off.
Well, a couple of things. I was you're obviously too young. I mean, I shot before the swift change around in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling when Crockett Sr. was still there, total legend. And it was more like an old man's tag team, Nelson Royal and Bernard and Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen. And then it started clicking 75, 76, first of Johnny Valentine as Booker. So I don't know are you still based in the Carolinas, and did you get a chance to watch any of that classic stuff when Flair and Steamboat and, Buddy Rogers passed the Nature Boy torch to Flair in like 77, and Bobo Brazil and John Studd, all of these guys, that was the most happening territory for about 5 years. Mid-Atlantic was amazing.
Yes, amazing. So real quick, I want to rewind. You said Nelson Royal. So yes, I'm in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is close to Charlotte. So anyway, about 2 miles down the road from my house, we took my daughter in to buy some cowgirl boots. And Nelson Royal has a boot shop here at 2 miles from my house. So you walk in, and I guess he's passed away since, if I'm not mistaken. So his sister or something, maybe his wife, I don't know, runs the store, and he's got like an old title up on the wall with newspaper clippings from Mid-Atlantic and all this. So when you mentioned that name, I was like, wow,
that guy's a total legend, NWA junior champion.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And he went outlaw. There was an outlaw promotion that took on, if you can believe it, in 75, a co-owner of the White Sox, Eddie Einhorn, and I was his photographer, the IWA. He took on both. He started to take on the NWA and Sam Munchnick, and then really took on Vince McMahon Sr. had these 3 outdoor stadium shows in Jersey. But Nelson Royal was teaming up with Cowboy Bob Ellis and some other legends. And I go, man, it doesn't get better than this. They're just stacked with talent. We're seeing that now.
Yeah.
It's almost the same type thing. And I was thinking, I got to have an angle for you for my newspaper column. I'm going to tie you into George the Animal Steele, because he was a little different, where your bosses in the service were cool with you working as long as you showed up on time Monday. But he was working for the Sheik, the Detroit fireball throwing Sheik, not the Iron Sheik, the real Sheik, Sabu's uncle. And he put on a hood and worked as the student. In real life, he was a teacher, and he said, "Oh, those guys are going to fire my ass if they find out at school that I'm wrestling on the side." And then when he started to make more money, he told them to F off.
Yeah.
One thing that pissed me off when you got brought up to the main roster, and then the whole thing with, it didn't feel as fun as the James Storm stuff when you were patched up with Elias, and then all of a sudden, I don't think. When someone's going to lose their hair or have their famous long hair cut, it always should be as part of like a hair versus hair, something like that. You guys could have done that and maybe elevated people latching onto you two guys on the main roster. But all of a sudden, it was like you showed up on TV with short hair, I think. And I go, what the F is going on? Well, explain it, do something, but, have some reason and give the guy an extra payday for having his hair cut, so he doesn't cut his hair and not get some dough.
Yeah. Well, funny thing is Elias and I worked very well together, man. So when we started doing that feud, we thought we were going to run a little longer with a tag team. Things changed. That's very common in that company. But we pitched the idea of, man, why doesn't Elias attack me backstage and shave my head? I was like, I'll go bald. I don't care. It grows back quick. And they were like, no. We just go cut your hair and trim your beard down. I was like, man, we're really missing out on some, because we're coming back from COVID where there was no crowd, no crowd at all. And we're going to, sorry about that, guys. We're going to Dallas, Texas, where there's a live, loud crowd. We can get so much out of this. But it was like a one-track mind at that time. It's like, no, we're just going to do this. We're going to wrestle this match and be done. So that's what we were working with. I completely agree with you because that, back in, you mentioned Mid-Atlantic, and no, I didn't as a kid. I didn't get to go to a lot of those shows because my mother, single family home at the time, so a lot of my viewing was on TV. So I witnessed a lot of this by watching on TV. But man, just there's so many opportunities that to me it's missed in general in the professional wrestling business. I feel like AEW is getting the chance to kind of do their own thing. The guys are getting to be their own character, be their own self, and get a little bit more edgy. But that's just not where WWE is now. Just kind of whatever Vince wants, do that. We don't ask questions. That's it. Go. Okay.
They're losing a step. They apparently Vince and some of his people were in talks to buy Ring of Honors, and then they would probably just shut it down and monetize the video library. But instead, Tony Khan, who's like the ultimate, the guy, but unlike Dixie, he grew up as a fan, from whatever, when he was 4 years old. And it's like the ultimate money mark, but in a good way. So another article I'm writing for Japan is, in the U.S. now, we're seeing these money mark promoters, but it's a good term, not a negative. Like Billy Corgan, huge rock star, and hardly anything gets said about that. And this guy has a heart. He's looking out for his employees and insurance and retirement and Kios and Roth IRAs and all that stuff. Same with Tony Khan. Nobody's perfect, but these guys are so much better than the cigar chomping, like Jackie or Crockett Sr. or My Boss or any of those guys from the 70s. It's like a new era of promoters. And then the indies, maybe even up to about 10, 15 years ago, most of the indie promoters were all pimply faced kids, marks.
Sure.
And you never knew if your check was going to clear. But now, so where would you like to go? John is probably going to ask you more in detail, but where would you like to go work? Because we don't want to see you go back to cable. Total diamond talent here. Yeah. Platinum talent that should be showcasing it. And do you like the fact that you could, bop all over the place? You could work for Corgan and AEW and Impact, and all this stuff, and New Japan and stuff. I don't know if you worked a lot in Japan, but it's fabulous.
No, man, that is a huge goal of mine, and I still talk about it, is to get to Japan. I don't know how open they are right now with what's going on, but that, I am definitely looking to try and get to Japan. My goal is, definitely not going back to cable. My goal right now is, and I've talked to my wife about it, just have some fun. For the last 8 months of my WWE career, I was miserable. Wasn't having a good time. I was like, man, I'm going to work, sitting in the locker room. I'm better than this. So now my goal is I got a bunch of indie bookings coming up, just have some fun with those. I really, before I got signed with Impact Wrestling, I was carrying the NWA national title, which I think I carried for a little over 2 years. It really helped catapult my career. And there was an opportunity moving forward where I was wrestling with Adam Pearce, Blue Demon, they were possibly grooming me to be the heavyweight champion of NWA, which because I got signed, obviously we changed all that. So I really like what NWA is doing right now. I like the product. It's got that old school feel to it. There's a bunch of guys I know there, Crimson, Bram, Magnus, or Nick Aldis, whatever we're calling him. But I would love to do some stuff with NWA. I'll never say no to AEW. I got good buddies there. I think the product is rocking, obviously. And then, you just hear Tony, buying Ring of Honor. There's so much going on in the wrestling world right now. And I love it because there for so long, it was just one company. It was WWE. And people were just like, man, beating their head against the wall. This is all we get to watch. And now we have so much variety. So the wrestling business is flourishing. And there's so many opportunities for me moving forward. But I think I would definitely like to do some stuff with the NWA.
I'll pass back to Jonathan, but I was going to say, I asked him, I go, well, is Chad, is he part of that thing? I could see him as a natural with the EC3 and former Braun Strowman, and I think Wyndham Rotunda is in that. All of these guys, badasses, and you fit right in there. And have you done anything or talked to those guys about some? Yeah,
EC3 and I are good buddies. We've thrown some ideas around. There's nothing definite in the works right now. I think it's a matter of just getting our schedules kind of aligned up, and I would say there is some opportunity here. So you're talking about the control your narrative stuff that he's got going on.
It seems like
I love it. It's really cool, really grungy and grimy and dark, and just kind of it's just something different, I think. And EC3, we work together in Impact. His mind's brilliant. He's just one of those guys that always thinking how to change things up, how to revamp himself. And that's why he's always relevant. He just knows how to do those things. So it's one that you definitely want to latch onto. So there's an opportunity there. I'm not going to say no.
Well, I was going to ask if AEW or NWA you mentioned there, because you're liking what they're doing, has either of those companies reached out to gauge any interest or stuff like that?
No, and I know so I just hit my 90-day no-compete clause. I guess it was February 18th, 19th. So I know before then, a lot of those companies won't even email you, won't even touch base with you because of legal reasons. But as of yet, I haven't talked with anybody. I'm trying to just maybe put some fillers out, see what's going on, have a little fun on the indies. Like I said, I'm completely booked through August. So it's not like I'm sitting at home on my butt doing nothing. There's a lot of opportunities coming up, but definitely want to try and reach out to NWA and AEW. AEW seems like they're bringing so much talent in. So I would hate to be one of those.
Now they have Tony's got two companies. So you're going to find some work, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's out there. And the thing is like, you can find work if you just, if you have a good look, a good character, somewhat of a name. I believe that some of these companies are going to be like, yeah, we can take this guy and do something completely different with him. Or I have ideas running in my head that I was trying to pitch to WWE about character stuff that was just completely, forgotten about, and no pun intended. But we, so I'm still
that is something that puts the shit out of me is how can you have this trio on NXT, the Forgotten Sons, but they're heels? These guys you're supposed to be cheering. I didn't get that. Being an old dude and seeing people come back from Vietnam and not get the props.
Sure.
So why weren't you guys faces? Or I didn't see like the earliest NXT before they came on TV where you had faces and they had your heels. What the F was going on?
No, I think it was just Hunter had this vision. And once again, Hunter controlled the NXT, the gold and black brand at the time. And he had this vision of what he wanted from the Forgotten Sons. And, it was one of those things where he was like, well, we're finally on TV. We're just going to kind of do what we're told, basically. I mean, I felt like, the heel thing, we would go to some places and they would want to cheer us because you got Steve Cutler that was that is a Marine veteran. I'm a Marine veteran. Blake played football in Texas. I mean, this all-American guy. So we had a hard time, depending on who we were teamed up with. Did they want to boo us? Did they want to cheer us? So we were fighting both ends of the stake there.
Jonathan, let me just say, so you were with brilliant minds, Hunter and Sean, and one of my best friends ever, Norman Smiley. I'm sure you know Norman. And
yes.
Taylor, Terry Taylor was there, and who else? Bloom.
Brookside, Robbie Brookside.
Robbie Brooks, UK legend.
Oh, man. Dude, I sit and think about just the opportunity from 2017 to when I went up to the main roster in 2020. I was like, man, I got to sit under the learning tree of many, many great minds. I mean, there was moments where we sat in the office with Shawn Michaels for 2 or 3 hours, or Terry Taylor, or Norman Smiley you mentioned. I mean, just phenomenal, man. If you go down to the Performance Center or NXT and you don't learn something, it's because you don't care and you don't want to learn, because, I mean, they're pounding it into you.
Oh, and Sarah D'Amato, I shot her opening up. She trained and started in Northern California.
Wow. Yes.
With these guys, Noah guys, Mike Modest, Donovan Morgan, the late Bison, Mark Smith. So, and then to see her, I don't know if she was released. Do you guys know, was she released as part, when they cleaned house of all Hunter's guys?
No, I think she, I feel like her and Cesaro were in the process of having or just had a child. So that's why you probably don't see her, but I don't think she's going anywhere. She's one of those.
I didn't even know that those guys were still together. I got a million shots of them together backstage at Ring of Honor, but you don't always hear the scuttlebutt of who's with who.
I believe that's it.
That's cool. So that's great that they're having a kid. Jonathan.
Well, I'm curious to know, there's 2 things I wanted to bring up, and thank you for the time again, Gunner. But
absolutely.
First thing I wanted to, and I didn't want to bypass this, because I don't think you've done many interviews since your release. Have you? Right.
No, I've done a select few. I have my own podcast, but it's more, my Christian-based podcast. So we don't really do anything wrestling-wise there.
Okay. So, well, that's why I really appreciate this, because I didn't see much out there, because, sometimes guys go on rants and stuff.
Sure,
But the first thing I wanted to mention was, what was your experience with WrestleMania 37 and this infamous rain delay? What were your thoughts? What's the environment you see because that's not the norm with that company.
Yeah, right. Well, first off, man, thank you for realizing I don't go on rants, because I just always prided myself. First of all, dude, I've been blessed to work for WWE. It's been an awesome job, awesome career. I have nothing bad to say. So I'm not going to be one of those guys that's just a bitter mind, living my dream. Tampa, so a 2-day event. Luckily, we, with the Braun match and Shane, we were the first night. There was, I think, a slight rain delay for that night. So we actually got to go out there and, Elias and I are running to the ring on these hard plastic, kind of things that are on the football field, just sliding all over the place. I mean, it was, dude, it was ridiculous. I mean, unfortunately for the fans, the second night, because they couldn't, if there was lightning, they couldn't do anything. Legally, they could not do anything. So the fans are sitting there having to wait. But you know what? I remember the first night we're standing up on the entranceway, and they're doing the America the Beautiful, I believe is what they do. And we're just sitting there going, man, this is pretty awesome, to be a part of WrestleMania. Because as a kid, that was one of my dreams. But unfortunately for those guys and those girls on that second night when it was really a bad rain delay, I felt so bad for them. But you know what? I'll say this, the crowd, they stayed there. They stayed there because, for almost 2 years, they hadn't got to see a live event at all. And for them to be there, I think it was like, well, we're going to endure this garbage weather. You pick Florida, that's what you gamble with, man, because one day it's sunny and 10 minutes later it's pouring down rain. It's definitely a memory for us all. I think we'll never forget it.
Yeah.
So we don't know what happened there. It's nuts.
I could only imagine, because you hear the stories, him throwing his headset and stuff. And because you hear the stories about if somebody sneezes and such, so let alone something like that. But the reason I was thinking about it is because I traveled down here to Tampa for a few days because I'm going to be covering the AEW show in Orlando. So nice. I spent a few extra days come down. I guess you would say I'm Nation, but staying at the Marriott here in Tampa outside of by Busch Gardens. But anyway, that's here nor there.
That where all the boys are?
Yeah, it might be.
I know the old days. That was the play.
So long story short, now I'm curious to know, since you haven't done many interviews, and I think there was a tweet or something that you said post release. No, yes, referencing that tweet. But here's the thing, and I'm not going to get into politics and any of that stuff. But with the one that got you heat, supposedly, with some fans and co-workers. Here's the thing, at least for me, and this ain't our show. We're not going to politics, any of that stuff.
Right.
We may or may not agree with certain political views, religious views, any of that stuff. However, with what you said, I think you have a little more credibility being a veteran to be able to speak your mind. Yeah. But with what you had said in those characters, you said nothing wrong.
Right.
You were showing support for someone you thought was doing a good job.
Sure.
So my question would be, what was your reaction to said potential heat, whether it be from fans, co-workers, whatever the case was, after you expressed an opinion?
Oh, it completely blew me away. I mean, that tweet went out, and obviously, we talk about the pro-Trump tweet that I tweeted out, and within 2 or 3 hours, I'm getting death threats to my family and tweets and calls to my cell phone, my address tweeted out, and then coworkers start to chime in, and I'm not going to name any names because I refuse to do that with them, but it's just it blew me away, and I was sitting there thinking, there's many times throughout the past couple of years, I basically tweeted the same thing. Linda McMahon tweeted the same thing. Basically, I tweeted about 2 weeks later, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute."
She worked for the dude.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing: is like we're talking right now. We're human beings. We all have different views, whether it be religion, politics. But people, you got the social media now, where they're just going to attack no matter what you say, what you do. They're going to attack. When in reality, like we're doing right now, we can just have a conversation, agree to disagree, and go, hey man, like, okay, whatever, you like that, that's okay. And I served 4 years in the Marine Corps. Yes, it gives me the right to support who I want to support. And like you said, it's not like I got on there and said something racial, even though they pulled up tweets from years ago where it was not about race, whether they like it or not. Anyway, and so I always say this: in my 20s, I would have been mad and ready to fight tooth and nail, but I took it as a learning experience. I refused to apologize. Luckily, the company never come up to me and said, "Hey, we need you to put out a public statement apologizing," because I would have respectfully said, "No, I'm not going to do that." I went to war in 2005. I voted for this person or that person or whatever. And there's many employees now and even then that they're tweeting things out that I don't agree with my views, but hey, man, that's their American right to support what they support, right? Yeah. And that's just something that just happened. And and I feel like some of the ones that I worked with that tweeted and retweeted it, we're looking just for for me, I don't care about social media followers. It's just not my cup of tea. Yes, I'm thankful I have them, people who support me, but a lot of them, I think, retweeted that just to get fans to go, oh man, yay, we love you now because you hate this guy. But that's just social media.
Yeah. And I want to wrap with this, and I'll let Dr. Mike throw something in as well. But you mentioned it earlier as well. And Gunnar, thank you for the time. And we want you to plug social media as well. But Absolutely. You meant if people choose to follow you and whatnot, if they don't already. But I'm curious to know, because you mentioned you do a Christian-based podcast.
Yeah.
And it's not like, again, we are Crazy Train Radio, everything else like that. We are fun, lighthearted, everything else. But you've been generous with your time. And I think if for people want to follow the podcast or social media and all, where can they find all this stuff?
Absolutely, man. So with me, social media, I'm CW_Lail_Gunner. So that's Instagram, Twitter, and then I got that Getter account, which I'm barely on, but there's so many now. So for the wrestling podcast or the faith podcast, it's called Wrestling for the Faith, and me and my buddy Casey Cage are the co-host. And we'll have some guests on every once in a while. We do talk wrestling because he still does some independent wrestling. He does his own independent show. So we'll promote that. But it's basically, us talking about our faith in Christ. I mean, so if you're into that, guys, or if you're not into it, we do a lot of different, topics and subjects. Please feel free to check us out on iTunes and Spotify. So any of your major podcast platforms, we have a YouTube channel as well. So it's Wrestling for the Faith.
And I appreciate that because, like I said, with our show, we're fun, lighthearted, nothing too serious. But it's like I like, at least for me as the host of this, I like to have an open mind because people have different thoughts and of everything. What, like we said, whether it be politics, religion, this, that. So I like to have an open mind and not judge people based on what you hear. So
right. Well, you're an adult and you're a human. It's like, man, we all got different views, and it's cool to sit and I just like to talk.
That's what he fought for. To protect their right to have the views, pro, con, Trump, whatever. We all respect each other. We're all Americans. It gets away from that. It really bugs the stuff out.
Well, you know what? I'm curious to know, and this is final question for me, because when we were chatting and setting this up and all, and I asked you about how we're going to introduce you, this, that, and the other, just to cover all bases, you mentioned that you are going back to the Gunner name.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know, because TNA or Impact or whatever at the time didn't trademark that. So how does that work for you as for what, like you said, you're going to be doing indie shows? And so do you own Gunner? Were you smart business wise to lock that in for you?
Yes. So when we did our contracts and stuff like that, I feel like, man, I want to say, and I was talking to someone about this, I feel like it kind of got brushed under the rug because I remember getting my release from Impact Wrestling 2015. And so, for instance, when I got released from WWE, they sent me my release form, and on the back page, it'll have like the whatever names or whatever I own and I can have. So mine on WWE was Gunner, like I own that. Now, when I got released from Impact, I was expecting it just to say Phil Shatter or whatever when I got there, but it had Gunner there that I owned the property. So I don't know if it was just one of those things where TNA just didn't care. They didn't really have the money enough to fight for something like that, or they're just like, yeah, whatever, we're not ever going to use that name anywhere else because we don't have an archive for footage or what, stuff like that. So luckily, man, I do own Gunner. I can do what I want to with it. I work with a Christian clothing company, Death and Defiance, that put out some Gunner shirts. So luckily, I'm glad, because I would have probably just, instead of GUNNER, I would have just put GUNNAR, been smarter than the system. So,
Dr. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to?
I want to apologize. I didn't know he was a religious dude, so I let some dirty.
Oh, you're fine, man. I don't point fingers. You're completely okay.
But B, are you going to be doing anything like WrestleCon in Dallas next month? And if not, I'll get on the phone to Mike Bucci and say, hire our friend Gunner to be at your thing. Are you already have any plans of being there, doing anything for?
No, I haven't gotten any WrestleCon plans yet. And I think most of my April is booked. So I got some shows. I do have a show in Dallas at the end of March. for a CWF promotion. But no, I never got con because I did WrestleCon in the past, 2015, I want to say. But as of now, no, there's nothing in the future for WrestleCon, so I won't be part of the Mania weekend.
What do you think of that? It's like all of these other companies, and Impact does that every year now, the former TNA, where they piggyback on Mania there, and everybody, it's a whole week, New Japan will send in the show, and some of the Japanese women's groups.
Yeah.
And there's supposed to be a AAA show from Mexico. It's insane. All of these guys, they all cling together.
It is now this year. I think it's going to be nuts because obviously the past couple of years they hadn't been able to do it or bring everybody together. So I think it's just one big family reunion. And I heard it one time, maybe a couple of years back, Vince was trying to put a kibosh on it or something like around a certain mileage radius. I was like, come on, man,
They did that right after San Jose, near where I was living. The next year, they had to be like way far away, which was a pain in the ass.
Just dumb, right? No, so I'm hoping that, if I get a chance to go out there, it'd be really cool because there's some guys I hadn't seen in years, Storm, and I would love to link up with Ken Anderson if he's doing any signings or stuff like that. But it's going to be huge this year, man.
Dr. Mike, let's definitely put him in contact.
Chris Abyss, I think he's still in the office doing something. Yep. You were pretty close to him too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Chris helped us a lot there. He's a producer or agent there on the main roster. So when I was feuding, he was linked up a lot with us, which I love, man. Because he's just a big teddy bear. We got along in Impact Wrestling, traveled a little bit together. Just the dude loves what he does, and he's got a great mind as well.
But you see, they had him there for like a couple of weeks with AJ. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
He was doing whatever his attorney character or something, Joseph Park, and it was awesome. And then he's off, and I go, geez, if anybody should be on camera, it's that guy. But anyway, more power to you. And I know we wish you nothing but the best. And I know you're going to be with a big company soon. So,
well, thank you guys, man. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to. I'll be 40 in June, but my body still feels good. I've been doing it 22 years in August. And, I still feel good. I take care of myself. So I'm looking forward to some opportunities.
Well, Gunnar, we appreciate the time. Nothing but the best from you. And thank you. And folks, check out the podcast you mentioned. Check him out on social media. He's very fan interactive. And
yes,
I appreciate the communication.
Wrestling for the faith.
Yeah, yes. Check it out. Gunnar, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time tonight, fellas.
Domo arigato.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Have a good night, man.
This brand is truly exciting, and I'm so glad that they are starting to make a positive impact. Little Bean Soapery is a woman-owned small business based in Northeast Pennsylvania. Little Bean Soapery does so much as all products are handcrafted and offer many different things for both men and women. Soaps, scrubs, body butters, bath bombs, solid cologne, and much more. Little Bean Soapery also does things for special occasions such as birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and special seasonal gift sets. But also, let's not forget large orders for party favors by request. The great things about all products is that they are crafted to be nourishing on the skin. If you wish to check them out, please feel free to visit littlebeansoapery.com. Any questions, please feel free to also email littlebeansoapery@gmail.com for custom inquiries and or ask anything else you wish. Tell them that Elena from Crazy Train Radio sent ya.
Hey, it's Steve Off. You're listening to Crazy Train Radio, and that's the bottom line.